K.M. Robinson. You're into photography. I know that you're big on Instagram. I know that you write fantasy, right? Steampunk fantasy. Am I
Yep, I've got some steampunk fantasy and a lot of sci-fi and a lot of retellings.
retellings? What's a retelling?
So that's like a fairy tale twisted up.
Oh yeah, I like that stuff.
It's a
Like,
lot of fun.
how far do you twist it? Do you twist it into a novel? Or are they short stories, flash fiction? What do you do with it?
Most of them are novels, but I do have some novellas or short stories as well.
Oh, okay. What do you prefer to write?
I love my novel series, so typically I write in trilogies.
You write in trilogies. Like when you start out, you're thinking, all right, this is going to be 2,700 words or 2,700 pages.
Well, typically novels go anywhere from 50,000 to like 100,000 words.
I keep
So
getting
I
yelled at
typically
every time I say I've written like a 65,000 word novel. That's not a novel. You'll never sell that. You'll
no,
never sell.
well, it depends on the genre. If it's a
It
specific
does,
genre,
doesn't it?
that will fit.
Yeah, it depends on your genre. Okay, I'm just going to plug your name back into Amazon so I can pull this up again. You're prolific, right? I mean, you've got the taste of K.M. Robinson pretty much everywhere on the internet.
Yeah, I do a lot.
And the writing is primarily what you enjoy, or photography starting to get into you a little bit and
Well, I've
become.
been doing photography for the last decade professionally.
Oh,
And so now
cool.
I've actually taken that photography and I started doing book covers for different authors. So I am a social media marketing strategist, which means I educate people on how to build profitable businesses through smart social media marketing.
I
And then
saw
I'm
that.
a best-selling fiction author, and then I also do my photography.
That's very interesting. How many books do you have right now? I'm looking at a bunch here. Wow,
Mm,
it never stops.
no, it
When does
doesn't.
it stop? Oh, well, there it goes. We're looking at like 20 books. That's really
Yeah,
interesting. That's really good.
yep, there's
When did
over
you
20.
start doing this?
I've been a published author for a little over 2 years.
I'm. You broke up a little bit on me. Can you repeat what you said?
I have been a published author for just over 2 years now. I've got 23 or 24 books out with quite a
Wow.
few on the list to come soon.
So, do you sleep?
No, never.
No. Tell me about your day. Like, how do you produce the content that you're producing?
Well, it's pretty interesting. I get up early. I'm a morning person, so I
Yeah, me
wake
too.
up before the sun. I
Mhm.
jump in, I handle all my emails, I talk to my clients and my students, and then I will jump into whatever work I have for the day. So sometimes that is recording videos to educate my students on the courses that I'm teaching or to deliver free information on how to market on social media. Sometimes that's writing a book, sometimes that is editing photos or designing things. And every day is a little bit different, but I try to pack as much in as I can during a day. Typically, I do about 4 times the amount of what most people do during a day, so I get a lot accomplished.
When do you start?
Anywhere between, like, 5 AM and 6 AM,
Gotcha. When do you go to sleep?
and the work is done, usually around 10 or 11.
I'm 10 or 11. I'm exhausted like by 5 or 6. But I've got 4-year-olds.
My brain shuts down around 6, but I keep working, so I feel you.
In the morning, you're basically correcting yourself for everything you did from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock.
No, it's actually not bad. I tend to work around the stuff that I, like, really need to be focused on,
Mhm.
so sometimes I'll write that late, but usually it's more design work, so it's not as
Oh, I
brain
see.
intensive.
You can kind of turn off the brain a little bit and then start working on it. Are you so you're working with Photoshop, or do you have another platform that you do your manipulations with?
I'm a Photoshop person. I was
Oh man.
trained by the best photographers and retouchers in the industry, and I'm very much about the Adobe Creative Suite.
But it's the best. Adobe does nobody makes better software than that company.
Adobe is fantastic, and I think they
Yeah.
actually have a photographer version of that platform, so it's just Photoshop and Lightroom and maybe one other thing, it's cheaper, so if you're looking into Photoshop, that's a great way to kind of circumvent some of the other programs that you may not need.
I think I need a little bit more though. I think Photoshop that I use has kind of an illustrative element to it as well, right?
Okay,
You can kind of bash those photographs. They're gorgeous. I mean, I'm looking at your covers now. They're good work.
thank you.
You have a lot of fun putting together covers together.
Do, it's so much fun, and it's relaxing too because it's just a lot of like photo manipulation work, a lot of artistic things that I can do with that. And because I've had all the training that I have, it's
Mhm.
easy for me to do. So it's one of those things where I can jump in and just relax and kind of melt my troubles away as I'm designing something.
Can you talk about your training? What kind of training did you get for what you're doing here?
I love this. So back when I started out a decade ago, I was very good in photography, but not so much in the editing world. And so I did a lot of studying. I used to take 700 hours of courses every single year for like 5 years to learn my skills within photography and business and Photoshop and design and all the little facets of the things that I do. So I had 700 hours every single year for about 5 years where I learned from the masters, and I would look for free trainings online. And I
Mhm.
used places like creativelive.com, and I would look on YouTube, and I would actually learn from the people who were the masters in that area. And I developed what they were doing into my own way of doing it, and I kind of learned from there.
Oh, that's very interesting. So, where did you find the most information? Where would you recommend? Well, you're actually a teacher now, so
I am. So I do actually educate on Photoshop and on design and on editing. But
Mhm.
if you're just starting out and you maybe don't click with me, or you want to learn from somebody else, or you're looking for a platform that has really good free content, you can go to creativelive.com, which started out as a photography educational platform. And if you watch their courses while they are live, you can watch them for free. And then if you want to buy their courses later on, it's like $90 to $200 per course, and you get all of the videos afterwards. And they've since expanded. They now do business, they've got all sorts of different artistic things, they've got crafting things. And so they have multiple channels. So no matter what you're learning or what you're educating yourself on within your industry, you're likely to find some classes that work for you within the Creative Live platform.
And how did you find this?
I found it through photographers. So I jumped on social media and I started learning from some of the photographers I like. And one of the photographers that I followed was actually one of the educators on the Creative Live platform. And from there, I met all of these other amazing photographers that I then learned from.
Is that the right place? I put it in the chat on the Discord. Do you see it?
Creativelive.com. Yes, that would be it.
Are you a person that is constantly learning even today? I mean, I know you said 700 hours, but what was your take this year on education?
I'm a little bit different in how I study things now than I did back then because I've learned a lot of the skills that I need. So now when I'm doing my education, I'm really honing in on specific areas within my businesses and with my brands that I need to know to either grow my business or to educate my students. And because I'm
Mhm.
a social media strategist, I spend a ton of time studying the social media algorithms, what's working,
Mhm.
the trends, the things that are no longer working, and I
Mhm.
really dial into what I'm doing within my industry and what I'm teaching as opposed to more of the general things because at this point over the last decade or so I've learned a lot of that.
Yeah, you can't hold on to things, can you? Because it changes so ridiculously fast.
It's so
That
true, especially within social media.
especially, I mean, you can really irritate people with the way things were. What are you noticing? Can you give us some ideas of the trends that you're noticing recently and maybe the last 6 months to a year that you think are around for a while or
Well, with social media, you are right in saying that it changes all of the time.
all the
And
time?
right now, they're putting a very heavy emphasis on live video. So on
Live.
Facebook and on Instagram, live video is incredibly important. But
Mhm.
Instagram is also putting a very heavy emphasis on IGTV and Instagram stories. And this is
Mm.
because they're looking for new space to be delivering ads to people who are
Yeah.
using their platform. And so they are really giving us a lot of tools to grow those particular areas. And with IGTV, they're putting that content directly into our feeds and giving it priority over any photos, videos, or posts we're posting on these platforms because this is what they want to grow right now. So live video is incredibly important. IGTV is incredibly important. Instagram stories is incredibly important. And YouTube is growing leaps and bounds because it's searchable content. So people are starting to realize that when you Google something,
Yeah.
you get those
I'm
YouTube videos.
I was looking at some of the stuff that you're developing. Your brand is you, right? I mean, basically you're the thing out in front of everything that you're producing is you, the author. Bookstagram, right? Are you into that as well?
Yes,
Yes. Yeah.
absolutely.
I know that through the person who introduced me to your work, Dana.
Yes. You and I just
Yes.
hung out at PennCon. That was a ton of fun.
PenCon. And
Yes.
I think you're coming to New York City Comic too, right?
I am
What
definitely gonna be at Comic-Con.
I mean, that definitely is opening up a door into a subject matter that I want to cover with you.
Huh.
But I definitely want to go back to social media just real quick. I mean, do you find that because you're so into the brand and because social media evolves so rapidly that people might get confused about what you are and who you are because you're changing too? Or I mean, how do you maintain a course when you're constantly like looking for the new way to communicate with people?
Well, with social media, things are changing, things are adapting, and we have to adapt as it goes. But just because there are new facets of these particular platforms doesn't mean that the old things aren't going to be really important as well. So if you are teaching a course on, let's say, Instagram, you're probably going to have to change things. You're going to have to add things. You're going to have to update things. But the basic legs of Instagram will always be the same. Those pillars will always be there. And so, in terms of social media education, I can develop these really great courses and then just tweak the little pieces of it that I need to update it or
Yeah.
adding bonus content for that as well. So as
I mean, a
long as
lot of it is just jumping in and swimming, right? I mean, continuing to do it. Wouldn't you agree? It's like kind of it's hard on a day to day to make those muscles work if you're not working those muscles.
for sure, you definitely have to do a lot of trial and error. You should be taking note of what is working and what isn't working, and then you should be really diving into what is working. And when that changes, you have to pivot within your business to make sure that you are staying on top of that.
I mean, you don't want little KM Robinsons running around out there. You want people to have an individual flair or personality to their social media. I would imagine anyway, right?
Absolutely. You don't need
Yeah.
to be me. You definitely need to be you, especially if you're the face of your brand.
I mean, are you or is the fiction? I mean, tell me about the writing, right? That's what started it, is it? Or is it the photography? What got you into this? What got you to this podcast? What made you the person who needs a brand to begin with? Is it the writing or the photography?
It's very interesting. I actually started out as an elementary educator. So I was a teacher for elementary school. So I jumped into that. That's what I went to college for. And when I got out of college, I knew I would need something to supplement my income. So I started my photography. And as I was doing that, I was also very involved in the book world as a reader. And
Mhm.
my author friends saw what I was doing with my photography and asked me to teach them how to take better photos of their books for Bookstagram. And at
Mm.
that point, my photographer friends started seeing that I was also teaching those authors marketing, and they asked me to start teaching them marketing as well. So I started out as an educator and a photographer, transitioned into a social media strategist, and then the books came later on.
KM Robinson books. Is this your photography on the front, the splash page that I land on?
That is my photography. That's actually part of a flying book series that I did in my photography life, where my subject will hold a book and pages will be flying around them, or books are flying around them. It's all book oriented in that particular photo series.
I mean, how do you like to interact more the most?
I
Is it in
kind
person at cons? I mean, I think that would be so cool to get into that and to be a face that people recognize because you're at places they go to find the content they like.
No, I was just at PennCon in St. Louis. I just got back and I learned some interesting things. I actually had a number of fans come to the event specifically to meet me.
Oh, that's
And that
awesome.
was really cool that they traveled from all over the country to come in and actually meet me and get me to sign their books and take photos. And so I love the interactiveness of those in person cons, but I also love live broadcasting because it gives a very similar feeling to that because you are face to face with that person. You may not
Yeah.
necessarily be able to see the viewers at home, but they can see you. And because they can write in the comments and they can interact and you can pull up their comments while you're live on air, you have the ability to have those personalized conversations, but it's not necessarily something where you have to be in a specific location for everyone to be joining you. So I love live broadcasting on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube to interact with my fans because it really gives us all that accessibility to each other and the ability to have those conversations without needing to be in a physical location at the same time. Dana was
I,
actually on my live broadcast talk show. So every Monday
okay.
morning, my co hosts and I hang out with a bunch of authors on a live broadcast where our
Uh-huh.
fans can come ask questions. And then at PendCon, we actually had the ability to hang out with each other behind the scenes. So our tables ended up being across the ballroom from each other. So we weren't even able to shout and wave at each
Not
other,
even.
but we did get
How
to hang
much do you,
out a
yeah?
lot behind the scenes.
What's your plans with your brand and your writing and your photography?
Well, that is a very long answer because I do have quite a few directions that I'm going in for all of the different brands that I run. With my books, I'm definitely headed to New York Comic Con next, and then I will be in Mermagicon in February, followed immediately by PendCon Charleston. So if you want to hang out with me in person, those are the conventions to do it. And I am going to be finishing up a steampunk Aladdin retelling series and jumping into some other books in the very near future in my author life. And then in my social media strategist life, I am speaking at different events. I'm partnering with different companies. I actually have a really big, I probably can't say too much about it yet, but a really big article and video educational based thing that I'm partnering with a live broadcasting platform because they have a brand new platform edition where we're going to be able to do some really cool things and we're working together to introduce it to their clients and their users. And then I am also going to be doing some really cool photography stuff coming up in terms of photo series that I'm working on.
Oh, fantastic. I'm really curious about your past in education. Are you still a teacher?
Social media strategist, I am
Sure,
reading
that's true.
every single day. Yep, I'm using all those skills, all the lesson plans, all that fun stuff, all the object lessons to educate my students. I am not in a school district right now, but I was certified kindergarten through sixth grade when I was teaching. But right now, I'm definitely using my teaching skills in my social media strategy life.
You have an opinion on the modern education system?
There's a lot of different places that people can go for education now. There's public school, there's private schools, there's cyber schools, which is really cool.
It's interesting,
And
right?
it is. And I think the
So
most
it's
important thing when it comes to education is that the parents are picking the right educational platform for their children
for
because
their
all
kid,
children learn
yeah.
differently. So some of them are going to thrive in cyber school, some of them are going to thrive in homeschool, some of them are going to thrive in a physical building surrounded by other students. So it really just depends on what's right for those students. Honestly, it depends on what school district you're working in. Some are better
Yeah.
than others. I've had the blessing of being in some pretty good schools. They've had really high standards, great teachers, but there are also things within each of those schools that I would definitely change. So it honestly depends
Mm.
on where you're at in the country and what school district you're working with and who's in leadership at that particular time.
Yeah, who do you write for that age range from, what is it, middle-aged fiction, or do you write for
I
adults?
Yeah, my books are young adults, so the
Young
main
adults,
characters
okay.
in my story are typically between 16 and 18 years old. My fans typically range from about 9, 10 years old all the way to retirees. I have a
Right.
huge fan base of stay-at-home moms. I've got a bunch of people who have retired and just binge read all of my books. Yeah.
You as an independent author do not have to subjugated by a genre, by an age range. Just be an author selling a book to somebody who wants to read one. Changing the subject a little bit to New York City Comic Con. Have you done this con before?
I have not. I've never been to a Comic-Con.
Oh my God, this is the craziest thing you'll ever experience. I'm going on Sunday with my wife and basically just sharpen your elbows because people are in your face the entire time. Do you have a booth?
Well, my publisher is sending me, so my publisher
Awesome.
has a booth, and we're all going to be there taking turns signing.
Oh, okay. I thought you were an indie lady.
Hybrid, so I'm both indie
Hybrid.
and traditional.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. What made you decide to actually, 'cause I was just reading your post about happy that you didn't sign the publishing contract or whatnot, which made you a stronger person. What made you decide to go in the direction of publishing or the publishing houses?
Well, I actually had a friend who was starting a friend of a friend was starting a publishing house, and my friend was running it,
Mhm.
and so I had been working with her to get some authors to submit their content, and they happened to find out about one of my books,
Mm,
and they had some great connections, and so I gave it a whirl.
so fantastic. So you're actually working on, and that's what I've heard. You're really part of the team when you're with a publisher. You get frustrated not having your fingers in all the parts?
Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. And it really just depends on the author and the publisher as well. So sometimes it's a really great partnership, and
Mhm.
other times it is a really bad partnership. And sometimes it's somewhere in the middle. So some days, and I think this goes for all authors, it's fabulous. And some days, maybe not so great. You just kind of have to weigh it out.
Where are you located in Pennsylvania?
I'm just outside of Scranton. So if you guys are fans of The Office, right outside of Scranton.
I was just through your little area, went up to a farm to pick some apples.
Oh,
So beautiful there.
it really is. And the leaves are starting to change colors right now. So it's very pretty.
Yeah. So tell me about your fiction. I see that you're writing about mermaids. I mean, what other kind of themes are you working with here?
Typically, I write toward retelling. So I have my fairy tales that I twist up in dark ways. And usually they have either a sci fi or a fantasy bent to those. But I also write things like dystopians, which, for those of you who don't know what a dystopian is, that's very much along the lines of Hunger Games and Divergent. I also do some fantasy work. I've got my mermaids, I've got some steampunk. So there's a lot going into my stories.
So, I mean, when you go to something called Pend Con, that's about writing specifically
Yes,
only.
that is an author convention. So
Okay.
it's like you penned a book or you wrote a book, and it PennCon is actually all of the different genres. So there were young
Mhm.
adult authors, there are picture book authors, there's romance authors, everything in between is there and available at PennCon.
And did you find your community through Pen?
There's so many people, there's so many wonderful people there, and you make great connections. I've got a ton of people coming on my show. We actually connected before the event, so a ton of guests came up to me and hung out with me while we were at PennCon, and that's
Mhm.
something that we found through other authors. We connected and they created this fantastic con for us.
That's fantastic. So you're always marketing. You're always doing it. You're always looking for the way to talk about what you're up to,
Yes, absolutely.
right? Why not? Why bother otherwise? What do you like in an author? I mean, you said obviously you were a tenacious reader when you got started, and that's what got you into it. What were you reading that actually piqued your?
It's interesting, really. My mother was a librarian, so
Oh
she
man, mine was too. Oh, it's
yeah,
so cool.
love it. So my mother was a librarian. She was a voracious reader, and she trained me and my sister to grow up to love reading. And I read so much all through elementary school, middle school, high school, and then college hit, and things were just so busy, and I didn't read nearly as much.
Oh,
I got
forget
out of
about it. Yeah.
college, and I would jump right into the work field, and I
Mm.
didn't have a ton of time to read. So it was a little bit of a gap time there, and then I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get back into reading. And so I started diving into things like Hunger Games and Divergent and the Selection series. And after I had read the Selection series, I just couldn't find a book to fill the void that it left in my heart. So I wrote my book, and it didn't intend on doing anything with it. I was just
Mhm.
writing for myself, but one of my friends found out, and she kind of forced me to be a little more public about it. And I wrote a couple of different books, and then I started querying and I started learning about the industry. And I had several offers on my books that I turned down. I know you mentioned that one article that I had written on why I turned down those traditional publishers. And eventually I found the right fit and I jumped into the world of books. And 2 years later, I've had a number of bestsellers, and I have many, many, many books out, and I get to do all sorts of fun conventions.
There's a truck going by on my street.
Having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
Oh, it's okay. Let's see. Is this better?
It is, yes.
Yeah, fantastic. Anytime that happens, let me know because I'm actually on a new mic. This is a new system. I had to
Okay.
take a break for about 6 months. And when I came back, my Google Hangouts was gone. So my entire world is changed. As I'm talking to you, trying to form my next question, it's like, oh man, I don't know how anything works anymore. So if my brain even my brain doesn't want to work as well as it was working before I took my little hiatus.
I
Um,
completely understand that. The platform I use to do my live broadcasting just did an update on how their platform works, and all the buttons are in the wrong places. And
oh my
it's
God.
hard to, moderate a conversation and
Mm.
produce a show and put all the things up on the screen and change who's on camera
Oh
and
wow.
still
Yeah,
be
you're
able to
doing that
ask
too, huh?
questions. Yeah.
Question I wanted to ask you. I think we're not of the same generation, so this might be interesting. What did you read as a kid? What was your series as a child that did it for you? Mine was C.S. Lewis, Chronicles of Narnia. I think I read every single one of those books like 20 times each.
I love Narnia. Narnia is so amazing. I was a very voracious reader as a child, so Narnia, I love Nancy Drew.
Oh,
I
Nancy
love
Drew.
Yeah, I loved mysteries when I was a young girl. If there was a mystery series out there, I read it. It was the best.
I was a Hardy Boys guy, yeah. I love the hell out of them. Did you ever try to write a mystery?
I have not written mysteries yet. I love reading them. I love solving them before the main characters do. I love watching mysterious TV shows and movies, but I have not tried my hand at writing a mystery yet, unless you count the little bit of a conspiracy I have in one of my novels.
But do you want to share it? I love conspiracies.
Well, it is fun. I have a book called The Revolution of Jack Frost. It's actually the one that's going to be featured at Comic Con this year. Basically, there is an out of control weather machine, and they have to figure out who is controlling the weather inside of this almost like a dome that they live in because people are starting to die. And so, when it gets down to it, you have to figure out who the actual villain is. So, it's not necessarily a mystery, but it is definitely a conspiracy going on.
I think about mysteries being like a puzzle you have to put together perfectly so that the entire time the reader doesn't know exactly what you're building until the last page or something along those lines. Just I wonder if it takes a certain type of intelligence that I lack.
Bryan.
Haven't even tried. I mean, God, when I write a story, it's like give up and say it's done. I just finished a story. I just finished a longer story today that took me months and months and months to dig as many mistakes out as I possibly could. I've gotten somebody's hands, so they're going to tell me that I was wrong. It's not perfect. There's lots and lots of errors I need to fix. So nervousness, it's all I think about. Oh, somebody's reading my work right now. Do you have somebody that reads everything you write? That person that has read every single word?
I've got a really great team that I work with, and they go through and they make sure that I'm on target with everything, and they check me for typos and any grammar errors, and they make sure that there are no weird plot holes. So I definitely have a couple of people who do that for me as part of my team, and then I've actually got some good friends who are not necessarily part of my team, but do read everything I write after it's been through my team's hands, just to make sure everything's good before it goes out to the public.
You're an editor too. So, I mean, that's a service that you're offering authors and writers out there, right? So, do you think that you can rely on somebody just to read your work, or does the professional relationship matter?
Well, it definitely matters. You definitely need to have someone who knows what they're doing when it comes to editing your book or beta reading or going through your book in any way, shape, or form. Because if you have someone who is not necessarily a professional, they might miss things or they might not know certain genre things. They might not know the trends. They might not know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. So it's very important to have someone who is studying the industry and knows what is okay to do and what's not okay to do and how things have changed. And in the professional world, there are specific rules that people have to actually adhere to. And so if you just grab some friends and have them do it, you're probably missing out on some pretty valuable insight on how you can be making your book
100%.
better.
I mean, we're talking about a business, right? At the end of the day,
Oh, absolutely. Writing, while fun, is absolutely a business. And if you don't treat it like a business, it's a hobby and it's not going to make you money.
fun. I have never had fun a moment I wrote. It's always torture.
Well, there is that facet to it as well.
It brings up a good subject, right? I mean, we are talking about our creative art. We're talking about something that you start with nothing to make something that somebody else is meant to enjoy passively. I mean, you're never to interact with a novel other than flip the page and continue reading. That's the main crux, making your reader continue. I mean, you're talking about trends and that as an artist, because you are right with your photography and your writing, do you find it distracting? How can you balance all of this into the work that you're trying to produce?
Very much right to market within my books. So I am aware of what is working now and what is not necessarily working now. And I make sure that I am writing specifically something that I can later market. So for
Mm,
me, that's a very strong influence in what I do as a writing. And yes, there are things that I want to do and things that my characters want to do. And sometimes we get a little off course. But at the end of the day, this is something to make me money. And so I have to be very aware of those trends and the things that are marketing well right now. And because I write
Yeah.
fast, I can really very strongly write to market and get things out very quickly. But it's
Mhm.
definitely
I mean,
something.
that matters, right? Writing fast, it
Yeah,
definitely matters. And so, I mean, yeah, right. Trends. Oh, you know what it is? I always like to get the opinion of people about J.K. Rowling, right? She wrote Harry Potter. She wrote it and tried to publish it. What's the story? Nine different publishers said, no, it sucks, go away. Scholastic said, sure, we'll take a shot on you. And they made billions and billions of dollars at the end of the day. She didn't write this as a trend, right? Did she? Wasn't really balancing this on anything that came before, but a fantasy story about teenage witches. But now it's a trend. Now everybody wants to write about teenagers. Now everybody wants to write about death matches, and we're not writing J.K. Rowling anymore. She's an aberration, but everybody wants to be the next J.K. Rowling. How do you feel about that? I mean, you've read her work. You would like to be as successful as her, if nothing else, right? I know I do, being a billionaire every day.
I actually have not read her books. They're not.
What?
I know they're not necessarily my type of story, but I am very familiar with what
With
she
the
writes. Yeah,
lore, right? Yeah, okay.
yeah, I'm familiar with Harry Potter world.
Her
It's just
story.
not necessarily my type of thing. I tend to be more sci-fi than fantasy, but
Well, regardless, right? You have you have a flavor, but that the flavor her that I'm mentioning here is that she did something outside the box. She wasn't necessarily saying, "Oh, you know what, I'm going to check everything here, and it's going to be great." She said, "This is what I got," or did she check all the boxes?
I mean, there are always going to be trailblazers within the industry, and the trends are always going to shift. So there are things that are part of this book world that are not necessarily popular right now, but will be popular in a few months from now or in a year from now. And so I kind of think you see a lot of the same things within the industry, and maybe it's just not that time for that yet. And really, if you are going to be doing something outside of what is marketable right now, have to have a lot of weight to throw behind it. So for her, she had a very big, well-known traditional publisher backing her book,
Mm,
and they
very
put a
true.
lot of effort into it. Maybe that doesn't work so well because you don't have all of that money and
Anyway,
all of that ability to be marketing in the way that those big traditional companies do. So
what I hear, the numbers like a million books get published a day or something along those lines. Maybe not a million, but there's so many books that you get buried by slush before anything could possibly happen. So unless you've got a little ripple and catch that wave, you're going to disappear.
that is true. You have to
The
learn how
weight
to
is scholastic.
market whatever you write. As long as you can market it well, you'll do okay.
And you offer classes. How much are your courses? Tell me about the business model, or the courses themselves and what they run people.
Well, it depends on which course it is. Different courses are different amounts of labor that's gone into it, different amounts of things that I'm teaching. So, one of my basic courses might start around $99. Some of them go up from there. And it depends on what I'm teaching, what skills I'm teaching, and how long it's going to take the person to actually grow from that within their business. So, how much of a change am I making in their business? That's what the prices are based upon. But then I also
Mm.
do things like live trainings, which may be $25, or I might do a little mini training, which could be free. I've got lots of free courses out there and mini trainings and different things that people can consume for free. And it goes all the way up to thousands of dollars if they want one on one mentorship for very detailed things within their businesses.
Are you consuming anything yourself? Are you able to? Do you have time to watch TV, movies, read books, anything like that?
Do, but not as much as I would like, and I do plan it into my schedule, so, especially with things like movies and television, I'm planning that in because I can then have conversations with my fans about it, so if it's
Right.
something that I'm going to then be able to use as marketing and leverage that within growing relationships with my fans, with my students, with my clients, I'm gonna make more time for that. If it's something just for me, maybe that goes to on the back burner for a while, but I definitely make sure that I'm taking care of myself and I'm up on as much as possible within whatever industry it happens to be.
People want to have their authors be fans of stuff that they enjoy as well, and be able to comment on pop culture and the zeitgeist and things that are happening around things they enjoy. I think I've noticed that.
Absolutely. When you have those things in common, you get to have those conversations with people. But also, from a marketing standpoint, if you are commenting on things that your fans like and they're interacting with, you actually position yourself as an industry leader for things that they like. So if you're telling them, here are great movies, here are great TV shows, here are great books, you're also going to be their person that they go to when they're looking for great books or great products that you sell. As long
Mhm.
as you are
They're gonna
positioning
trust
yourself
you.
like that. Exactly, it's a trust
Trust
factor.
you. I appreciate that. Yeah, because I will definitely buy something from somebody that I respect. If they point out an author, I'm going to that Amazon page and I am going to look at what they're suggesting. And if I buy it and I got burnt, and the first page is horribly written, and there's something specific I'm looking at right now in my library. You know what I mean? I'm never going to trust that person again. It's
Right.
burnt bridge completely. What do you think the future of our industry holds for us? There's a war, right, between traditional publishers and indies. What is your opinion on the future?
Honestly, indie is where it's at right
I
now.
think so
I
too.
know so many indies who are doing so incredibly well.
I
And
hear
I
that.
know so many people who are with traditional publishers who are
Aren't.
basically left on their own. I've seen, even from like the biggest names in the industry, they're supporting the books, but
Yeah.
the author has to do so much of the work by themselves. So
Yeah.
if the authors are doing all this work on their own, why aren't they making all of the money? In the
Exactly.
indie world, you get to keep all your royalties. You get to
Hmm.
make choices on your cover, on your formatting, on who you work with for editing. You get to make the final say in how your book sounds, and you get to do all of that marketing on your own and then keep all of your profits. So I think right now, hybrid publishing is really big, being both traditional and indie, but I'm seeing so many people leave traditional publishing in favor of indie because it is growing so quickly and doing so well. And you have the ability to access all of these different avenues for marketing, and they are
Hmm.
just exploding everywhere. So I think
Right.
indie is the future.
I totally agree. Indie is the future. And I like the idea of hybrid publishing as being kind of an education, right? Learning from each other, finding out why things work the way they do. I mean, the traditional publishing world is traditional for a reason. It has its things it does because those things work very well. And the idea of working with an editor is one of those things that is just so invaluable. Totally agree with that as well. Indies, I mean, they can mess it up for themselves. It's all about that cover and how it sells. I'm looking at three of yours right now, The Revolution of Jack Frost. I mean, it's good stuff. The work that you're doing, you could definitely tell you put a lot of care into it. And as you're talking, you could tell you're a very educated person as well on the subject matter that we're discussing. I mean, you just don't pull it out of nowhere. You're developing this as you go along. You're a resource. It's amazing.
Done a lot of studying. I've put a lot of effort into making sure I know what I'm doing within my business so I can take care of myself and my business.
And so, I mean, you're already hybrid. So you're doing what you need to do.
I'm learning a lot, and I've got great connections in the traditional world as well. So even though I'm not in specific arenas within the traditional world, I know what's going on behind the scenes because I have people who work there or who are signed with them, and I get a lot of information that way on what is and isn't working. And then I'm actually able to innovate with what I'm doing in my indie world and do things that traditional publishers just can't do.
Exciting. What do you want people to know about that we have not covered?
You're hanging out with me and you want to come join me for some of this fun, if you want to look into what I'm doing, right now I've got 6 free ebooks out on all of the major platforms, so you can grab a whole bunch of my stories and jump into those worlds. I
Oh,
also have tons of education out for entrepreneurs who want to grow profitable businesses through smart social media marketing.
mm,
You can go to socialmediafororbosses.com for all of that. And there's tons of training videos out on YouTube. There's mini courses. You can even create your own talk shows like I do within my businesses. And I've got a free full out training on that on my website. So there's tons of ways that you can connect with me and grow your businesses, whatever they happen to be.
social media for bosses. I love it. That's a great one. Thank you so much. And I'm so happy I got to do it with you today and learn from you. And
Thanks so much.